a room full of writers and you have a really hard time writing a bio, and Kendra wrote that bio, that's perfect. So I'm going to take you away from San Francisco. Hope you don't mind. This is a story about Belfast in Ireland, which, for those of you who don't know, is a city in the northeastern part of Ireland. It's in a place that some people refer to as Northern Ireland. It's because it's under the jurisdiction, should we say, of the UK, the United Kingdom. So it's kind of the last vestige of colonialism. What else can I tell you? So this partition took place in 1921, but the conflict about all this stuff has been going on for hundreds of years. And the conflict often manifests itself in a sectarian divide between Catholics and Protestants. Don't need to get too serious. But this divide is more of a political divide these days than it's really a religious divide, or even, I would say, a cultural divide. So, this is a story about Belfast, and since I have such a talent for titles, it's called A Belfast Story. I know you remember. You'll shake your head like you don't, but you remember. The story I told you that first night we met at the Orpheus, when I'd found Daddy's banknotes under the mattress and started playing shopkeeper with Emma. I'd never seen banknotes before. I thought they were tiny newspapers. Latest news from France, I shouted, like a wee boy on the corner. Happy to have something to sell other than twigs and stray bits of yarn. Hitler's on his heels. Emma was buying banknotes with stones in them, stones we found on the street polished with our skirt tails. I told you all this after we danced, after we pulled out a 10-pound note to buy me a Coke. I hadn't seen one of those since that day playing with Emma. Mom found us and thumped us. I mean, she thumped us a lot, but I remember that one, so I do. It was Daddy's money from his settlement from the accident at the shipyard. Mom needed that money so bad she thumped us like she knew she could never have it. She thumped us like she knew Daddy would have thumped her. It all went to Daddy's drink, so it did. And if you tell me that surprises you, I'll thump you, you big Egypt. Oh, Liam, we danced that night. Remember? Late August, 1960, at the Orpheus. Liam and Lucy, Lucy and Liam. Talk about trouble. Why'd you make me sing that night? Remember? Oh, we ain't got a barrel of money. Maybe we're ragged and funny. Why'd you just stand there? Why'd you just stand there and lick your lips like I was the most delicious thing in the world? Part 2. If you want to talk about trouble, you need look no further than when Uncle Walter came around with his car. You could hear it even before it turned the corner where wee Agnes, the crippled girl, lived with her granny. Even old Jimmy Watson, who wouldn't cross the door for his own funeral, would part his front curtain to have a juke at our Walter's motor. Daddy would not meet us at the door, that was Mom. She'd show him into the sitting room where Daddy would be sitting by the fire. She'd ask if Walter would take a cup of tea. Tea, give that man a drink. Mom would have to scramble if there was no whiskey in the house, if Daddy had drunk it all. She'd send one of us down to Madden's to get a half pint. That was a good day, when one of us could walk into Madden's, jingling a few bob, because before Big Di Johnson could say, you tell your Di he's the best buying his own drink, not sending the Williams, we could shout, we have a guest, our Uncle Walter's here. Never heard much talk coming from that sitting room, so I didn't. We'd have a nosy from the kitchen through the crack in the door. Daddy'd be slumped in his chair. You would have thought he was sleeping if he wasn't trying to dig his chin into his neck. Uncle Walter was saying something. He had his back to us and was leaning forward towards Daddy. A man sounded like a pot of potatoes on the boil than a man talking to his older brother. At first, Mom would send us out the house once Daddy and Uncle Walter were settled, but Daddy thumped her for not having the children there to say goodbye. Not like himself ever got out of his own chair, mind you. So then Mom would try to scoot us out the door as soon as Uncle Walter left, waving and chasing after his car. But that didn't work either. Daddy would have to fetch us. Where could we go like? It was all for naught. Even if we came back hours later looking for our tea, Daddy would still be brooding in that chair. It was worse, so it was, if he'd had some time to really get thinking and drink the rest of that half pint. No dinner for yous until you earned your keep. Twigs and yarn, Liam, the same stuff I pretend to sell Emma when we played shop. Door to door, every door in the block. If we'd no yarn, we'd tear some off our hems or cuffs. Schenkel Road, 1949. I was 11. I knew what pretending was and what pretending was not. Damn that man all to hell, wee Agnes's granny would say, grabbing Emma's shivering wrist and pressing a copper into her damp palm. Part 3. Daddy was dead by the time Liam and I had to face facts. Daddy was a lot of things, but he wasn't a bigot. Mom now is a different story. Where she got all that hate, I'll never know. Maybe it was raising 9 children on her own. Daddy not lifting a pinky made it worse. There was no picnic with that man in the house. But how could she reject my Liam? Suppose she never got past the name, Liam McGrady. But what was I supposed to do? Make something up? Mom, I'd like you to meet Mr. Alistair Houston. It was Michael who told her. God love him. He was 9 and overheard something. He had no idea. He's in Australia now. Haven't seen him in 38 years. After she caught wind, Mom wouldn't let me leave the house. I was working at Gallagher's up on York Street. She let me go to work, probably because she still wanted those free cigarettes they hand out every Friday. But she knew it was all girls at the factory anyway. Beyond work, I was a prisoner. I found a man who didn't drink, had a good job. What's a girl to do? Thank the Lord, Emma was already married. I moved in with her and Charlie. They were the happiest and most unhappy times. Emma and I still joke on the phone that the only reason we got married was to have our own bed. He's a good man, Emma's Charlie, a straight shooter if there ever was one. Not sure Emma would have the strength to stand up to Mom if it wasn't for Charlie. I converted, so I did. Charlie and Emma never said a word. They weren't church-going folk at the time anyway. But if anybody would know love when they saw it, it would be them two. Liam and I tied the knot, if you can believe it, at St. Matthew's in the Short Strand. Years later, we'd be shooting at each other on that very ground like flipping cowboys and Indians. I don't care what your persuasion is, boys, but having a pitched battle at the church, lunacy, so it is. But on that day, the breezy summer's day, 1963, it was only Mom and her 5 brothers standing out there on Bryson Street. She felt strong enough about it to march into the heart of the Short Strand, but only to stand across the street from the church. She wore black sunglasses and crossed her arms high on her chest. That's the day I realized how tall she was, a good 6 to 8 inches taller than any of her brothers. I didn't get any of them jeans, so that's the last I saw of her, after Charlie and Emma stepped in front of me when I came out the door of St. Matthew's, a married woman. There's Mom's potato bread she'd baked with Bramley apples. Then there's her on my wedding day, after I'd done the deed. Her standing stiff and thick as a mob boss, curly hair trying to fly away in a summer gust, gray coming into the temples, her rat's nest of rust-colored hair, my hair. Part 4. The doctor said I should be lucky you haven't gotten, what's the word he used? Aggravated. He said it was very common at your stage of dementia. Even the softest of hearts, the doctor said, God love him. He didn't know I need to worry. Not sure I've met a Belfast man with a soft heart. There are a few with a big heart. My Liam is one of them. You were always cheeky, but always cheeky in the right way. Oh, how we laughed again. Sometimes I forget how we laughed. Me, the one forgetting. Do we have to forget before we can remember? The doctor says there's something there, behind that calm quiet I see now, as if you're already grieving for something. What's the point if you can't talk about it? I could always talk for the two of us, but never thought it would be my job to do the remembering. There was that time we went back to Willie McCausland's funeral. Only a couple years ago, was it 2010? He was always good to you, Willie. Emma, the saint, had Mom by then. She'd taken her bed in the spare room, taken to her bed in the spare room, shifting only when Emma and Charlie turned her to bathe her and replace her sheets. Guess that's one upside to the way Mom was with me. Sometimes I wonder, God forgive me, if that's all she was waiting for. Why she stuck it out for 94 years, just waiting on her wee Lucy to come back and wipe her arse. Emma never asked if I wanted to see her while I was back. She talked about Mom, told me how she was doing, but never as much as twitched her chin in a way that suggested I should call on her. Driving away from Willie's funeral, you asked me if I wanted to drive by St. Matthew's, maybe have some lunch in town. We had time to kill before the flight. Just take me to the airport, I said, and that's what we did. We dropped off the rental car and sat there 5 hours before our flight. We waited. We waited to leave. My knees were up and down like a fiddler's elbow. I didn't get up to pee even. You knew not to say anything. You knew not to be cheeky. You knew not to grab my knee, try and steady it. What you did do was take my hand. You held it. You didn't get a smile or a tear or even a glance and never said a word about it. Now that's a man with a big heart. You don't have to remember that one, Liam. I can remember it for both of us. Part 5. July 1972. I was working as a cleaner for the council. We were all in the canteen for our afternoon tea break when the bombs started going off. It was the only mixed canteen the council had at the leisure center just across the bridge from the city center, and a cheer would go up each time there was a thump and the windows shook. Something like 30 bombs in an hour. Slowly the cheers died out. Cheering at death. This is what these women would take to their graves. Did they ever stop to think, even now, that they were cheering together? A month or two later, Father McManus called. We were living just off the Lower Falls. This was after trying the Antrim Road. Before that was a wee flat off the Woodstock Road. Anything we could afford was on one side or the other, and neither side wanted us. Father McManus said we'd be doing everybody a good turn if we moved on. He said he couldn't protect us. You guys haven't been able to hear me the whole time.
I heard every word.
Just in the last 2 seconds.
Justin. I'm reading your lips. Start over.
Start over!
I wouldn't do that to you. A month or two later, Father McManus called. We were living just off the Lower Falls Road. This was after trying the Antrim Road. Before that, it was a wee flat on the Woodstock Road. Anything we could afford was on one side or the other, and neither side wanted us. Father McManus said we'd be doing everybody a good turn if we moved on. He said he couldn't protect us. I said I want to have babies, Father, and he said, well, you'd best be having one somewhere else. The last place was me and Liam in a room in the Holy Lands on Fitzroy Avenue, sharing a flat with a bunch of hippies. They'd sit around, smoke their blow, play their music. They said Van Morrison, who crashed there once. They kept saying it as if it were true. At first, their dopey smiles were a relief. There was a Spanish girl in the house called Vida. Some fella named Hugh had got her pregnant and brought her back. Vida wasn't her real name, but she loved the Vida bread, that malted loaf they only sell at home. Her English was non-existent. She must have been 7, 8 months pregnant, ready to burst, so she was. The only time I saw her lose herself was when she was eating a big slice of toasted Vida, gobs of butter dribbling off. She'd take a bite and blow air out her nose, as if even breathing would ruin the taste. The rest of the time, she sat on the settee, watching her Hugh get off his head. Her eyes were dark here and there and everywhere like a blue-arsed fly. Then comes the day when my Liam brings home 2 tickets for the ferry to Liverpool. Said he'd seen me watching Vida. Said I looked more scared than the pregnant Spanish girl. It was only later I learned that Vida means life in Spanish. Her baby would be a year older than our Karen now. But she left too, I'm sure of it. Back home to sunny Spain with you, Vida. You'd be crazy to stay in that movement.